What is a futurist?
I think the term futurist is a bit confusing. For me, there are futurists who theorize, which I did too, but they go deep into theory and how to understand tomorrow by calculating things. And there are other people who focus on economics. There are some who focus on technology. So there are many things a futurist can do. But a common thing between all of them is that they all look at data. Nobody's looking into a crystal ball. So it's really studying data in a different way and kind of keeping yourself narrow into talking about possibilities and probabilities of what can happen in many different areas of the world. Everybody can be a futurist if you start talking about tomorrow and the possibilities of the futures.
What are the top trends maybe of 2025 and maybe of this decade that you really have your eye on?
One of the trends that I'm super interested in and that is taking shape slowly is cryptocurrency, digital payments of all types. Like this is not just Bitcoin or Ethereum. This is the entire crypto world and what it can do. I'm also talking about government coins and all these CBDCs, central bank digital currencies, the whole plethora of what comes under digital payments and digital currencies. I think that is taking shape slowly and steadily over the last 2 decades.
How does your view of the future shape your investment decisions?
So I think for me, I do look at everything from a technological point of view. To be attracted to something has to have fundamentals, a long-term, growth and stability. And maybe it's somewhere I want to be an early investor in something. We're looking at sustainability. You're looking at green hydrogen. You're looking at electric vehicles, EVs. You're looking at microprocessor industry. All of these are powered by technology and how technology is making them better. And I think it's a wise decision to have those filters to think where will this thing go next and who will use it and how will they use it? Well, that makes sense. Maybe I should invest in it.
Once in a while, I'm sure you look back and you ask yourself, okay, was I right about this? Was I wrong about that? Do you find that it's easier to make short-term predictions or long-term predictions?
Long-term predictions are easier. Short-term predictions are harder. The challenge with short-term predictions and foresight is that things move slowly in the world. They don't happen as fast at a adoption level that everybody's adopting to something.
This is the Money Seed Podcast, where we discuss all things investing, plain and simple, the way it should be. Please remember, this show is for educational and entertainment purposes only and is not intended to be investment advice. Welcome back to the Money Seed Podcast. My guest today is Ian Khan. Ian is a futurist, an author, and the well-known host of the series The Futurist on Amazon Prime. Ian, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Gabe. It's been a while, and it's great to chat with you here, and I'm excited.
Ian, it's not every day we have a futurist on the show, and I can't wait to get into all the details, whether it's technology, geopolitics, the future, what drives our world, and all that. But let's start at the basics. When you meet somebody and you introduce yourself as a futurist, what is a futurist?
I think the term futurist is a bit confusing. For me, there are futurists who theorize, which I did too, but they go deep into theory and how to understand tomorrow by calculating things. And there are other people who focus on economics. There are some who focus on technology. So there are many things a futurist can do. But a common thing between all of them is that they all look at data. Nobody's looking into a crystal ball. Everybody's looking into data of some kind, whether historic data or foresight into things that can happen based on data that is available today and postulate and say, hey, you know what? This can happen tomorrow because that is happening here. Or this is happening today because that happened many years ago and now that trend is moving and shifting. So it's really studying data in a different way and kind of keeping yourself narrow into talking about possibilities and probabilities of what can happen in many different areas of the world. And that generally is a futurist. Everybody can be a futurist if you start talking about tomorrow and the possibilities of the futures.
I believe you've written books about things like the metaverse and prompt engineering, and you're really into technology. I gotta ask you, like when a new technology starts hitting sort of like the mainstream and the media, and we hear things like terms like the metaverse and crypto and AI, I feel like most of what we hear is just noise. It's just very little value in it. It's just a lot of newspapers and articles just repeating the same things over and over. How do you cut through the noise and how do you find the relevant information that helps you understand these things?
Yeah, undoubtedly, we are living in an era of not just information and noise, but there's an explosion of information and all kinds of information. And it's getting more complicated because guess what? Crises sells in newspapers, controversial things are very popular, negative net news sells faster than positive, more than positive, positive news. So there's all these things that are impacting just the production of news and information. And on the other hand, the consumption of information has also changed. Guess what we do all day long? We have our thumb and we're checking Twitter, we're checking TikTok, Instagram, what have you, stocks. And so two things have fundamentally changed. Before I answer your question, two things have changed. One is the generation of information and how fast it's generated, and the second is how fast we consume it. So this is leading to the explosion of information. When you have a new technology coming in, it's not just something coming out of the blue. There's evidence, there's work being done by companies, let's say today, or the next many years, that'll lead to a breakthrough 5 years from now or 10 years from now. And people within those circles of that technology have been living that for decades or many, many years. So it's nothing new for them. But when this is introduced to a world where this information doesn't exist before, let's say the invention of a new device that nobody has seen, that these guys have been working on for 20 years, but finally now it can see the day of light, it becomes an amazing and incredible thing. And that's kind of what is happening with technology as well. With technology also, there are many proponents, there are many stakeholders, there are companies who have invested hundreds, thousands, millions, billions of dollars into research, into finding out or creating something. So they're definitely vested into making it popular, getting people to use it, or for it to find a use case. There are supporters of technology who love everything new, who want the world to be different or good. There are advocates for technology. There are critics for technology who want to say, no, this can be bad. They're not necessarily bad people or hate that thing that's happening, but they want to point out at the negative things, the bad things, the things that can go wrong. And we may talk about that now. So all of that is happening, and I have to choose a position for myself. I have to choose a position every time as to where is this particular thing going. Well, if I encounter a new technology, let's say it's artificial intelligence, the buzzword of the decade, I have to choose my position as a futurist and say, well, is it good or bad? What can it do for us? And then what am I going to talk about when it comes to AI? And AI is such a broad field. It has many aspects to it. It has the good to it, the bad to it, the positive, the negative, the gains and the efficiencies to make the world a great place, but then also sinister stuff, for example, deep fakes and cloning people's IDs and all of those things. So every single technological area that I see or I visit or I want to talk about, I have to choose a position and I have to be the neutral person. I cannot take sides because as an opinion leader, as somebody who has a lot of people who I speak with, I have to choose carefully what can I tell them that doesn't put them in harm's way, or maybe they're not missing out on an opportunity. So I've got opinions on everything technological, and I think we all should do that. We all should do that. Many times people don't have opinions is because they don't know about something and they just take things at face value because they don't know what to say. So audiences and people out there can be futurists by starting to have an opinion on things. It will not do any harm if you have an opinion. And to talk about things with their friends, peers, family, whoever it is, and to share that opinion and to advocate for their opinion and to hear other people's opinions. And that, I think, is the greatest thing we can do today. Apart from just, looking at what's new, what's trending, we need to have opinions to make the world a better place.
When you're researching a topic, where do you find your information?
Different places, of course, a few years ago, the go-to thing to do was to read books. You'd go to a bookstore and there's this new book, and you'd be like, oh my God, I've been waiting for this book forever. Pick up the book and there you go, acquiring knowledge. That model has now changed. Now it's not the book that's the first thing for many people. For me, a lot of information is online. I am constantly scanning news. I'm looking at topics that interest me. Trust me, I'm watching TikTok videos and Instagram as well, just to see what is going on with a trend or if something is happening. I read a lot of journals, magazines. I read opinion pieces, newspaper websites, research. So it's all of that crammed up in a day. And lucky for me, I many times read fast. I go through things fast in order to understand where do I need to go deep. So I do not take a deep dive into something right away. I have to scour the environment, see what is interesting, and then I might take a deep dive in. And this is different from what I used to do before, where I would take a book and read it end to end and be like, you know what, I gotta finish this book. I have to finish it. That doesn't happen often now because I might be referencing 3 different books on a topic and doing research online. So I think that has changed for many people, not just me, that we're getting information from multiple sources of information, which is amazing.
What are the top trends maybe of 2025 and maybe of this decade that you really have your eye on?
I think a lot of interesting things are happening. When we talk about trends, I think we have to tone it down a little bit. So I'm not going to talk about billionaires going into space because that's not a trend. That's just crazy news out there. But I think something that changes humanity, that impacts communities, that really changes the bottom line of a lot of people. I think in no particular order, one of the trends that I'm super interested in and that is taking shape slowly is cryptocurrency, digital payments of all types. Like this is not just Bitcoin or Ethereum. This is the entire crypto world and what it can do. I'm also talking about government coins and all these CBDCs, central bank digital currencies, the whole plethora of what comes under digital payments and digital currencies. I think that is taking shape slowly and steadily over the last 2 decades. It's nothing new, and we are seeing adoption nicely. Everybody's paying interest to it, and who knows what's going to happen in 2025. But it's not just America that we're talking about. I'm talking about Estonia. I'm talking about Singapore. I'm talking about India, which is the world's largest population, and they have mastered digital payments at a government level. There's tracking of everything. There's distributed ledgers that are doing a functioning of the government. So this is not, I'm not talking about Dogecoin as such. I'm talking about a global revolution in currencies, payments, and what that'll shape. So for me, number one is this world of digital payments. And I would highly advocate that whoever's listening to this episode, start your journey of digital right now. If you haven't touched it, if you don't own any currencies or what have you, you don't need to buy any crypto, but start learning about the lay of the land. Take the next 3 months learning everything and then make your moves and have opinions on what this is. So that's trend number one for sure, is this era of digital payments, digital currencies, crypto, and the works.
I gotta ask you more about crypto in general and Bitcoin specifically. What is the role of Bitcoin, do you think?
So Bitcoin is, I feel, a really innovative invention that somebody did on a digital platform. I made a documentary called The Bitcoin Dilemma about 3.5, 4 years ago. It's out there in the world of YouTube. Bitcoin has many roles to play. It really depends on who is using Bitcoin for that role, right? Bitcoin can be used as something to do a transaction, to, let's say, buy something and exchange that value, or it's also called a store of value. You can hold Bitcoin, sit with it, hope it appreciates, and maybe in the future sell it for more. So in one way, it's a store of value. And those are the things that are making it very attractive for people because number one, it's explosive growth. Explosive growth. We haven't gone into technically what makes Bitcoin, but for me, these two things stand out that you can buy something without a US dollar or without a pound using a new thing called Bitcoin and many others. And also it's a store of value. You don't need to have gold or silver or bullion hidden under your bed. You can now have something digital that's completely online. You never see it, never touch it, never feel it. And yet it's growing in value. It's not a stock. What is it? Is Bitcoin or crypto in general? So these two things are very important, I think, when it comes to crypto or Bitcoin.
Few minutes ago, it seems like you hinted that maybe we are still at the early stages of the adoption cycle for crypto in general worldwide. It seems like it's still gaining popularity, gaining acceptance. What about some other technologies? I mean, you always hear things like, AI. Is that a bubble? Is it not a bubble? Is crypto going to crash? It's not going to crash. How do you determine where we are on the adoption curve of a particular technology?
It's very difficult to say that here's where a technology is, because you are talking about many different things that you don't control: markets, global economies, investments going out in companies, and so on. So anybody saying here's where we are is kind of saying most likely this is where it is. So Gartner comes out with its hype curve, all analyst firms are coming out with it. But when you talk about, let's say, where crypto is right now, crypto's been out there for a decade and a half, I think, a decade and a half, maximum 20 years in the works. But who's using it? I'm not using it for my everyday transactions. We're not buying, our groceries with crypto every day. We're not. So we have to see, where is it being used, right? We have the case of El Salvador. It's a tiny country in Central America, and they did this whole thing where they said, "Yep, we're just going to buy Bitcoin and we're going to change everything," and they went from US dollar to Bitcoin. I think that's the world's only use case when a country adopted Bitcoin and they wanted to use it. So there's lots to do. There's 6-7 billion people on the planet. They're not using crypto to transact on a daily basis. So this is really very early days. Adoption of Bitcoin or any cryptocurrency has to be at multiple levels. Governments need to be in it, people need to want it, transactions need to happen in it, companies that are producing goods and selling goods, they need to be able to take it. So the entire monetary system has to change. And our monetary systems of the modern world are a few hundred years old. They're not going to change overnight just because Satoshi said, "Hey, here's Bitcoin." So it's going to take a lot to completely demolish our infrastructure in the world and say, "Yeah, here's something new." So very hard to do. And that's kind of what adoption is all about. How do we demolish something that's existing? How do we replace it with something? It's going to take centuries. Who knows? But when you look at other technologies like artificial intelligence as an example, or blockchain, or Internet of Things, things take time, because when you have a product, for example, which is a very consumer focused product, you have a Sony Walkman, you have an iPhone, right? In a few days, weeks, months, you have millions of people buying that product because of mass appeal. They're buying it, they love it. It's a couple of $100 or couple of $1,000. At the beginning, when the iPhone was launched, it was just a few $100, three or $400. And so adoption for a product when it comes to consumers is easy. Lots of people, low price. Here you go. Everybody have this thing. But when it comes to systems such as governments changing or big massive industries changing, that doesn't happen very easily. So AI is definitely changing things because it's impacting multiple industries right now, right? Because it impacts data. Every industry works on data. Every industry is collecting data. The functions behind constructing a building when it comes to data collection is the same as performing a surgery, is the same as flying an aircraft. All these activities generate some kind of data and information that can be stored in a database. And imagine that this act replicates or happens thousands of times, thousands of aircraft take off and land, right? Collecting data, massive amounts of data. Think about United, think about American Airlines, think about any airlines. They fly thousands of aircraft in a single day. Every aircraft is generating information, right? Information about the fuel system, the direction, the temperatures, the cockpit temperature, wind velocity, everything. Every element is data that's being collected. And guess what? At the end of the day, they have hundreds of terabytes, millions of terabytes of data now they've collected. If magically we could have a magic box and put all that data in there and tell the magic box, "Now tell me, how efficient are our aircraft? Or what's the impact of a change in wing design and how far can my aircraft go?" And it does all these calculations and tells you the exact answers that you need. Well, that magic box is artificial intelligence, right? That is AI that collects data, studies it, looks at it, based on the algorithms that it uses, that you have given it or somebody has programmed it. That is the magic box of AI, and its applications are everywhere. So that is the reason why many people and experts and luminaries of industries are saying that AI is greater and bigger than the invention of electricity. It's greater and bigger.
Wow.
And Sundar Pichai says that. Andrew Ng, one of the greatest scientists of AI out there, he says that it's greater than the invention of electricity, bigger impact than electricity. And I really believe it. I truly believe it, that it's going to change our world like we don't know. And so it's important for us, again, to understand things, then have an opinion on them, and then be part of it. That's how you become part of something. So AI, big.
Yeah, and it sounds like it's just getting started, right? And it sounds like we're still very much in the process of getting all that data, gathering more data, figuring out the algorithms. I personally am of the opinion that we still haven't seen all the capabilities that AI has and all the ways that AI is going to transform our world. I think we're still very much at the beginning of it.
Absolutely. And the reason why this is happening and why all of a sudden this explosion, well, AI has been in the labs for the last 4 decades. It's nothing new. They've been working on algorithms for 4 decades, 40, 50 years. It's nothing new. But what has now changed in the last 10 years is the compute capacity of microprocessors, is the explosion in how fast computers can now compute, how great memory is for computers. And when you look at server farms, these server farms with millions of computers that large tech providers have, they have a massive amount of computing capability. The Microsofts, the Googles of the world, the tech providers, we have to look at these big operations and say, wow, how much capacity of compute does this thing have? And that has changed why AI is here now, and it's everywhere. Hardware is cheap. It's easy to put hardware technology together so that now you can feed it all this data and it's going to change everything. So lots of theories out there, and we can go into them if needed, but the improvements in hardware technology, microprocessor technology, is responsible for this surge in AI, and it's just going to get better and better and better with every passing day.
I got to ask you, Ian, and I have to asterisk the question. This is not financial advice, but you have an amazing insight into technology. How does that shape your investment decisions? I mean, at some point we all have to save for retirement. I'm sure you do as well. Do you take any bets on specific companies? Do you stick mainly to mutual funds? How does your view of the future shape your investment decisions?
So I think for me, I do look at everything from a technological point of view, and I see what it's just my interest. There's other ways of looking at it. But for me to be attracted to something, something has to have fundamentals, a long term, growth and stability. And maybe it's somewhere I want to be an early investor in something. So I will look out for those things. And there are so many things happening because of technology in different industries that you can somehow think that the forecast of this industry is going to be good. And that's what I look for. We're looking at sustainability. You're looking at green hydrogen. You're looking at electric vehicles, EVs. You're looking at microprocessor industry. All of these are powered by technology and how technology is making them better. And I think it's a wise decision to have those filters to think where will this thing go next, and who will use it and how will they use it? Well, that makes sense. Maybe I should invest in it.
And so do you pick more of an industry or technology, or do you pick specific companies?
No, it depends. It's a mix of all of that. It's not just a single one. I might be looking into an industry, let's say manufacturing, and then figure out, why is something changing in manufacturing, or which are the companies that have changed their manufacturing process, and what are they doing? Maybe I come across a news that says some company A, B, and C has now invested, I don't know, $400 million in AI, and they're going to change how things work. That's very interesting because now, first of all, they'd rather have done a lot of background work on this and invested all that money, and then I can look into deeper into what is the demand of their product and how will things change for them once they do that. And I have to see, what is the market for this product, right? Where is it going, and how's that shaping this entire company, if you will, and where is that going? And I think that forms kind of the basis of figuring out, is it an investable company or not? So you have to use multiple different, I guess, indicators and do some detective work, not get too deep into it, but you could, and to see. On an alternative side, I will also look for news and things that are happening with respect to just one technology. And I think that's an advantage you have when you're starting looking at everything around you is, okay, let's see what's happening with AI today. And I might see 10 different things that have happened with AI, and maybe two of them are interesting. And if I'm as part of my work, I have to look at technology in general, absorb and see what's happening. So not everything I'm looking for is related to an investment, but I may come across some things sometimes that are worth noting and going deeper into and figuring out where's this thing going. So I think once you do this a few times, you kind of form a pattern. You find your own way of doing things, and everybody's got their own way of doing things.
You are in a very fortunate position, Ian, where you regularly speak with world leaders, people in, you know, whether it's universities or academics, use business leaders, and I got to ask you, in your opinion, what drives our world? Is it big companies? Is it small companies? Is it billionaires? Is it politicians? Is it intellectuals? What drives our future?
Oh God, I think hope drives our future, literally, seriously. Hope is something that people who want to see a better tomorrow have inside of them, and they have hope for their family, their careers, their job, their company. And so if you look at it, a positive future and a productive future has the foundation of hope in it. If you are pessimistic and everybody's pessimistic, we're not going to move an inch forward. So I think hope drives the world. After that, it's really the contribution and kind of the convergence of different things that comes together. People who want to change things, people who want to improve things, who want to invent something, create a product. So entrepreneurs, yeah, great. Entrepreneurs are great. Startups and founders are great. People who are innovators and the crazies, I call them, or Steve Jobs used to call them the crazies as well, people from Apple. But people who are, let's say going into space, the billionaires who are burning hundreds of millions of dollars and going into space, we might think they're crazy, but I really appreciate what they're doing because somebody's got to do crazy things for us to go to the next frontier, to invent, to understand why something failed. And just the stakes have gotten bigger, right? I think back in the day when Edison or these folks invented things, right? It didn't cost too much given today's money. It didn't cost too much, maybe a few $1,000s. But now that is converted into hundreds and millions and billions of dollars. Is just numbers. So yeah, they drive the world, but people wanting to do things, of course, demand. We all need to live better, eat better, do better things for ourselves. That demand is constantly growing. The world's population is growing. We're multiplying. So that's growing demand of, let's say, consumer goods or what have you. But I think this whole convergence of everything coming together is creating the world, is creating these things and economies, and it's just a very complicated system that things have evolved into.
I think you hit on something a few minutes ago about being an optimist versus a pessimist. I think there's a general bias within humans, right? That we always think that the past was glorious and great, and the future is this kind of horrible place, whatever. Like people are generally pessimistic about the future, and they kind of reminisce about the past. But do you think do you consider yourself an optimist?
I would think so. I wouldn't survive if I wasn't an optimist. And I don't know why people thrive on pessimism. I feel like being pessimistic is great. You can evaluate risk and you can look at bad things that can happen, but then it stops you from doing many things. And I know many pessimistic people in the world generally, and they always have brakes on. They don't do much and they stop other people from doing things. I mean, think of it. If we always listened to pessimists or we always had a pessimistic mindset, we wouldn't do much because we'd be afraid of everything's going to fall and failure is going to happen. Failure is a part of life. Who hasn't failed? And who succeeded in doing something without failing first? The more you fail, the more you know how something doesn't work. And then you can finally create something incredible. And, this quest of creating or wanting or wishing for a perfect outcome is false. Don't wait for something to be perfect and that'll be the ultimate thing. It doesn't work that way. half-baked things can also save lives, and they get better with time when you constantly start working on improving them. So going back to the pessimistic mindset, pessimists need help and they need to think a little bit positive, a little bit, not things with a positive outlook that, hey, maybe this is a positive thing that's going to happen. So I think they need to broaden their horizon. My sympathies are with.
Well said. Well said. I got to ask you, there has to be something that keeps you up at night. I mean, yes, even though, we're both optimists, once in a while we have something, like a black swan event, kind of like COVID or whatever. Is there anything that keeps you up at night, whether it's kind of like a China or America going to war or the European Union breaking up or anything that keeps you up at night?
So nothing political keeps me up at night. I think we live in a pretty okay world, and I've seen much worse. I'm really grateful for, first of all, I have a lot of gratitude in my life, and I thank, my creator for everything that we have around. I thank nature for what nature provides us, the abundance of food, whatever, right? I don't want to sound too philosophical right now. So many things I'm very grateful about that kind of calms me down a little bit and it doesn't stress me out. So I'm relaxed. What would stress me out is if somebody that I love is not doing well, if they're hurt, if they are sick, if there's an issue that can't be handled. That really keeps me up at night. Tragedies keep me up at night, or events that are just sudden, or there's a crisis of some kind. That'll definitely impact me. But I think everything else, it's the cycle of the world. There are cycles that the world runs on, right, from the Egyptian civilization to the Mayas to the Incas, and it's us now here in the modern world. These cycles come and go. Civilizations come and go, people come and go, eras come and go. Who knows where the world will be in the next 500 years or after 500 years? And think of it, that will your generation, your grandkids, will they ever know who you are, right? And if you want me to answer that, do you remember your grandparents like 6 generations up? We don't, but right now, for us, everything is happening and we're so much into it. So yeah, I think if I look at myself from a different angle sometimes, I see a different perspective, and that kind of, shifts my mindset a little bit.
Once in a while, I'm sure you look back and you ask yourself, okay, was I right about this? Was I wrong about that? Do you find that it's easier to make short-term predictions or long-term predictions?
I think long-term predictions are easier because they're not here. They're safer. They're safer to make. Like, for example, if I were to talk about, hey, in the next 20 years, that can happen. It's great to hear that. And it's easier to make that prediction because that time is not here yet. It's not here yet. You, however, have to balance your opinion with facts and outlook that you can provide that is based on data and information available today. So if we say right now, in the next 10 years, all disease will be eradicated from the world. There will be no more cancer, no more diabetes, nothing. No disease will exist in the next 10 years. It's not going to happen because the data is not supporting it. However, can we say that with a safe level of caution that what about the next 30 years? Do you think human beings will really, acquire this, what's it called? The longevity of being able to live for 200, 300 years? I would say, yeah, given how technology is headed forward, the things that are happening right now, let's create the exponential growth curve for that and think what could be the impact. Then it's a safer bet. Then we can predict and we can say, yeah, that's going to happen. So long-term predictions are easier. Short-term predictions are harder. The challenge with short-term predictions and foresight is that things move slowly in the world. They don't happen as fast at a adoption level that everybody's adopting to something and all of a sudden things are changing. So crypto will not take over the world in the next 2 years. Definitely not happening. But will there be an adoption of something else? You've got to balance your opinions, I guess, in that way, but use data to support that.
Ian, you have a new book coming out. I believe it's called Undisrupted. Tell us, what can we learn about from reading the book? What is the book about and when is it coming out?
Of course, of course. Thank you. The book is Undisrupted. It's taken me about 5 years to put the whole book together. Some time ago, when I really got deep into foresight and working as a futurist, I realized there was no way to measure disruption. There was no good way that I liked to know how disruptible is your business. That led me to studying different industry studies that were being done, research that was being done, and me and my team read more than 250 different of such studies and across different areas of business. And we came up with a metric called the Future Readiness Score because it was missing. So we said, hey, there has to be a new KPI that measures how disruptive your business can be, what the impact of disruption is, and how future ready you are. We're not future proofing you, but future readiness. So that was the foundation of the work that went behind Undisrupted. And so that is available now, Future Readiness Score. Anybody can take it and you can find out your organization's Future Readiness Score. And the book Undisrupted is my take on what do leaders need to do as of right now, 2025. What kind of transformation is the world going through? What is technology doing to many different industries around us? And how can we be future ready and leverage the Future Readiness Score, if you like, in order to be future ready and to understand where you are right now at this moment in time? The example I can give is if somebody blindfolds you, takes you in the middle of nowhere, right? You've got no landmarks, drops you in the middle of that place and removes your blindfold and asks you to go home. How will you get home? You've got nothing. You've got no landmarks. You don't know where you are. So it's impossible to get to your destination, impossible to return home without first knowing where you are. You need to know where you are. And then you can figure out ways to do that. You might say, I'll look at the stars. Well, then you know where you are. Imagine there's no stars. So that's kind of the way of understanding the future as well. If you don't know your current state of readiness, then how are you going to be somewhere where you need to be successful with a certain revenue, with a certain organization, with a certain growth? And that's kind of the formula and the fundamental behind the book. A book is available in stores right now. It's on pre-order and it's available everywhere where you get books, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, everywhere. Just look for Undisrupted. And it will ship on February the 11th. And so it's a great time to buy the book right now because I am giving out bonuses and free gifts with the book, including a monthly call with me every month where we go through technology and talk about things that are shaping the world. And you get the Future Readiness Score. You can take it, your organization can take it, and you get a bunch of other goodies which are just available right now.
Amazing. Yeah, I'll definitely put the link into the show notes. Ian, where can people follow you?
Well, you can go to my website, Get Undisrupted. So GetUndisrupted.com. That's my book website. That's where you can start your journey, learn about my book, my work right now, and go from there.
And you are very active on social media as well. I believe you're on LinkedIn, X, YouTube. You're right?
I am. If you look for Ian Khan Futurist, you will find my channels at the top.
Perfect. All right, Ian, thank you very much for taking the time to speak with us today. It's a fascinating discussion. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, Gabe. Thank you so much, and best wishes to all your listeners and viewers across the world. Thank you so much for having me.
Hey, thanks for joining us for another episode of the Money Seed Podcast. Please remember to click like and subscribe. It really helps spread the message to other investors and it helps attract new viewers to the show. We appreciate your support. Thanks very much.